Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts in the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have the double standard from Plasman30, and it's a self-post that they made, and they said, U.S. resident, I should do whatever I want to my own body. And then they say, liberals, progressives, absolutely, we will fight to keep your body under your control. Under no circumstances is the government allowed to tell you what you can do with your body. U.S. resident, awesome. I'd like to sell my left kidney to pay for my college education to highest bidder. Liberals, progressives, are you crazy? We can't allow that. U.S. resident, what happened to your body, your choice? Liberals, progressives, yeah, that only applies for things that fit in with our values, so we'll let you get an abortion, but that's about it. U.S. resident, W2F. And I would agree very much with that. The Democrats would always say "my body, my choice," but that only seems to apply to abortion, not. That's why that's why how they can. If it's something if it's one of their values like abortion, it's completely fine. But if it's anything else not wanting to take a vaccine, then it's suddenly they'll have an excuse like, oh, pregnancy isn't contagious, diseases are contagious, that's why you should be forced to take a vaccine. And that just goes to show you that they're hypocrites. They only want to enforce their values on you. But if it's something that you want to do, if it's your values, then suddenly they increasingly want to push to make it illegal. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have you committed a felony yet? Probably so, from Lemon Limelight, and they said from a Washington Post column. Have you committed a felony yet? Probably so. Emphasized. Less than a century ago, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch notes a single volume contained all federal statutes. By 2018, they filled 54 volumes, about 60,000 pages. In the past 10 years, Congress has enacted about 2 million to 3 million words of law each year. The average length of a bill is 9 times what it was in the 1950s. Agencies published their proposals and final rules in the Federal Register, which began at 16 pages in 1936 and now expands by an average of more than 70,000 pages annually. By 2021, the Code of Federal Regulations filled about 200 volumes, and in a recent 10-year span, federal agencies turned out approximately 13,000 guidance documents. Ignorance of weird law is no excuse. It is inevitable. Recently, Congress has had an average of 56 new federal crimes every year. Some scholars say no one really knows there are more than 5,000 federal statutory crimes and at least 300,000 federal agency regulations, none written by Congress, carry criminal sanctions. As a result, Gorsuch says a legal scholar estimates that 70% of adult Americans today have committed an imprisonable offense, many, maybe most, without even knowing it. And that just goes to show you how the state can make anything it wants to a crime. They can come in and go after you for any reason they want to. It doesn't even matter what's written down. They have everything written down, so they can charge you for whatever. But even if there's something that isn't written down, they can still go after you. And that's why the state is inherently authoritarian, I would say. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have China-linked Spamouflage network mimics Americans online to sway U.S. political debate from APnews.com by Andy Say. And yeah, I think that is not good. But that being said, I definitely think Russian well, in this case it's Chinese, but they usually blame on Russia for when it comes to social media bots and shills. But regardless of if they're Russian or Chinese, I definitely think the influence of them has always been overstated, and it's more of a way to go after dissent. It's modern day McCarthyism. They will say, oh, anyone who dissents from my official narrative at all is being influenced by Russian or Chinese operatives. And that's just a lazy way to discredit all dissent whatsoever. And that's my thoughts there. Then we have Trump doubled down on authoritarianism by selecting J.D. Vance from Reason.com by FlimsyL5563. And yeah, I personally don't like J.D. Vance, but with that being said, I would say Kamala Harris doubled down on authoritarianism by selecting Tim Walz as well. The two parties are really just two sides of the same shit coin, and that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have yes, the free market at work from Ragnarok KXG, and that's a crossword from the Dad It subreddit. Don't buy a snoo. We bought a snoo 3 years ago, secondhand for our kiddo. Worked amazing. I'm setting up the snoo for a second time, using it with a baby to come end of this week, and when it was connected to Wi-Fi, it bricked. Sent an email to customer support, and they replied back with they judged it stolen and disabled it. If we can return it to the original box of 4 components, we don't have to, they'll give us a 50% discount on the rental program. Otherwise, good day, sir. Fuck that shit. Today the plan is to call them and make sure that they know that this is the business model they want to employ. They can expect to be killed with kindness until they can't help me. Then I'm calling a supervisor and they'll meet Mr. Tanya Hyde. And yeah, that just goes to show you how ultimately, sometimes when you buy a product, they can now disable it remotely if they want to. And yeah, that's why I personally am very against anything that require any product that requires a current that requires an internet connection, because ultimately those in positions of authority over it can ultimately to take your access away, take your access away from it. And yeah, that's why I think people should buy more physical stuff media than digital media, I would argue, because increasingly, if anything's digital, those in positions of power can increasingly just take it away. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Angela McArdle in favor of normalizing early age marriage, more aggressive compositions from Mises Caucus from CH4 Locks, and that's crossover from the Fakertarian subreddit. Angela must have seen everyone calling Republicans weird and felt it out, and she tweeted, "We need to change the anti-human culture if we want to get rid of abortion." And then New Age Messiah replies, "Probably normalizing early age marriage is the best solution." And she replies, "Yes." And I think that just goes to show you how they're saying, oh, they're trying to link that, say, oh, it's about child marriage. But, early age marriage isn't necessarily child marriage. It's important to distinguish that because, the progressives want to say anyone who dissents of our narrative at all when it comes to the trans surgeries for kids, oh, there's the supporters of child marriage. And, that's how they're using it, that tactic to shut down all dissent. And, yeah, I personally don't really care for that. But yeah, if you want to support, if you want to think kids can't marry, I personally think you should be able to think that. But I personally think that's a NAP violation. But as I've said, early age marriage isn't necessarily child marriage, despite what the progressives might want you to think. And then we have Buy Borrow Die Explained from CH4 Locks, and that's crosswords from the Buy Borrow Die Explained subreddit. So you've read about Buy Borrow Die, but you're left with more questions than answers about how and why it works. Maybe you're skeptical that it works at all. Is it just a concept journalist and manufacturer that sounds good on paper, but falls apart under close scrutiny? I'm a private wealth attorney at an international law firm headquartered in the U.S., and I implement Buy Borrow Die for a living. The short answer is yes, Buy Borrow Die works, and it's a devastatingly effective tax elimination strategy. And then they go over it and how you can just buy. It's I think you buy assets, then you it's the higher. Yeah, so if you want to live like that, I think you should be able to, but ultimately, I do think people should be held accountable for their finances. But with that being said, I think if you do want to skirt taxes like this, I do think taxation is inherently fast, so I think this is completely fine. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have new Argentine currency launched to offset Malay's shock therapy from FinanceIO.com by a ninja lover. And it's a Bloomberg article. So the governor, an outspoken critic of Malay by the name of Ricardo Quintela, dialed up a radical plan of his own. He created the province's own currency, the Chaco, had sheets of it printed up and started dealing it out in wads of 50,000 to all government employees. And yeah, I think if people want to make their own currencies, I think they should be able to. I'm personally not a fan of any government issued currency, so I really don't care about the either of them. But if this guy wants to justify making his own currency for his own state, I think he should be able to do so, even if it's not part of the national currency. Then we have no one wants to work anymore, so let's force inmates to work. Alabama made $450 million from convict leasing, forcing inmates to work at fast food chains. Lawsuit from lawandcrime.com by Ragnar OKXG. And yeah, I personally don't think that people should be not forced to work if they don't want to. But for some states do have a prison exemption that they can force inmates to work if they deem it necessary. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that, but ultimately the state can force anyone to do anything it wants because it has a monopoly on the legal use of force, and that's the sad reality that we live in. Then we have NSFL TW Animal Death. You don't hate them enough from Flimsy L5063, and that's crosswords from the ACAB subreddit. And it's apparently cops going to a man's home and shooting their pet dog and killing it. And yeah, that just goes to show you the state has a monopoly in force, and they can justify doing whatever they want to, and oftentimes they won't be held accountable, and sometimes you just have to cope with that. Then we have where you're most likely to get a speeding ticket from CH4 Locks, a crosswords from the Matt Porn subreddit. And it looks like it's mostly in the east and south that you're most likely to get a speeding ticket. And yeah, ultimately, those in positions of authority can issue a ticket or pull you over for any reason they want to. I think my mom just said she just got pulled over for running us for not fully stopping at a stop sign, doing like a rolling stop. And yeah, that's the cops do have the authority to do that. And that's why, ultimately, sometimes, their rules only legitimate since they have a monopoly on force. And if people stop giving that to them, then suddenly their rule will become illegitimate. And I think that's very much a libertarian perspective. Then we have Trump vows to release Epstein client list along with other docs long hidden from the public from theblaze.com by Donald Key, crosswords from the Arkansas conservative subreddit. And yeah, I don't know if he'll do that. He could have done that during his first term, but he didn't. But yeah, hopefully if he does get elected, he does do that. But I'm not really that enthusiastic about it happening, because politicians say one thing, then they don't end up doing it. It's like how Obama promised to close Guantanamo Bay in 2008, but never ended up doing it during his 2 terms as president. And we have gas prices, more decreases at pumps, and as the United States now have prices under $3 per gallon from WashingtonExaminer.com by Donald Key, and that's crossword from the conservative subreddit. And yeah, it's good to see gas prices going down, but it's ultimately I don't think that is I'm trying to think of the word, how the economy's doing isn't just about gas prices, it's clearly not doing well otherwise besides gas prices, but, I'm sure, the Kamala Harris will use this as an excuse to say, oh, everything's going great. Well, in reality, that's not the truth. And yeah. Then we have Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool exposes working for alleged Russian influence operation in new DOJ indictment from Mediaite.com by Swamphanky Dan. And yeah, I personally think this is just, as I said earlier with the Chinese post of, it's just anyone who dissents at all is going to be labeled a Russian asset or operative. And it's modern day McCarthyism, just find anyone who dissents at all and give them the label Russian asset or operative, and suddenly all their arguments are debunked. And that's not very libertarian. I think, libertarians, I think if you want to work for the Russian government, you should be able to. But that being said, you just can't debunk. You just can't say, oh, this person's argument is wrong because they're a Russian asset, especially when you label everyone who dissents at all as a Russian asset, that's like the boy who cried wolf. When you cry wolf for the 50,000th time, eventually no one cares anymore, and that's very much what happens when you label someone a Russian asset, or a lot of other labels as well, such as fascist, Nazi, etc., etc. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.